Welcome to the Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today, I sit down with someone who had been exposed to the LLM since the mid-'80s. From starting Green Outfitters to the Arroyo Lodge, all while pulling a shallow sport. This is my conversation with Ray Box. You ready to run in or ready to do it?
Yeah, let's try it.
Cool. All right. So I got Mr. Ray Box in the chair today. I'm really excited to do this. I actually got your name from Ryan Sparrow, who's someone I spend a lot of time on the boat with. And after he kind of explained to me your story, I realized I had to have you on here, considering you had spent so much time here on the bay and have been able to see it through so many different iterations of what it is. So with that being said, why don't you just give us an introduction and then we'll just start with the first question.
Well, good. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. I have been in this area part-time or full-time probably for 35 years. I first started coming to the lower Laguna on the island. We travel from New Braunfels down to the island. I had a friend in New Braunfels that was from Harlingen, and that's how I got introduced to South Padre Island in the bay and what have you. And we fished here for several years, and probably that was in the late 70s, and probably in the early 80s, maybe 83 or 84. About the time I was starting to fly fish down here, I discovered Arroyo City. And I actually just didn't even know about it, even though I knew the people from Harlingen. I just saw the mouth of it and then checked it out on map and went and checked it out in a car. And next thing you know, I'm over there. And a few years later, have property there. Yeah, I have property there, and I turned it into a lodge. And it's been a great experience.
And we're going to go over all of that. Like, we're going to go over that little by little and break it down completely, because the way that I start these with the first question is, I like to start at the very beginning. So why don't you start me at like the earliest memory you have in the outdoors, like the earliest memory you have in the outdoors, and then just talk me kind of like your progression as an outdoorsman, kind of like the little things, for example, just real quick. I've a good amount of the guests on occasion will have like a sort of rite of passage story where they caught that one fish by themselves and now stuff like that. Yeah. That's the goal here. Okay.
If I had to tell you when I first got introduced to the outdoors, I probably can't remember.
Well, I figure.
Yeah, it was a pretty young age. And I know by the time I could remember things, I was eaten up with fishing.
Wow.
And even though as a young man, I hunted and fished and did all that outdoor stuff, but I, evolved into fishing to become my main pastime for recreation outdoors.
Sorry, real quick. Any influences? Grandfather, father, friends of dad, or dad's friends?
Yeah, all family. It was between my parents, and they had a lot of brothers and sisters, so I had just great crew of aunts and uncles and cousins, and they almost all were outdoors people.
Wow.
So from the beginning, we were either camping on rivers or traveling to other lakes and what have you. I grew up in Waco, so freshwater fish as a young man. And we traveled to the Llano River and other places to visit relatives' houses and vacation and what have you.
So you said your Harlingen friend was the first person to introduce you to the Lower Laguna, but was there someone who first introduced you to the concept of saltwater fishing?
Not really.
So there was your friend that first. Your Lower Laguna was the first saltwater.
Yeah, because my dad, who of course was the main person who took me fishing, what have you, he just didn't have anything to do with saltwater.
Yeah.
He was a freshwater cat fisherman.
He didn't want his gear to get broken and corroded. I get it.
Well, it just wasn't as good to him. So that's actually correct. My friend Gary, who brought me down here the first time, I had never really fished in saltwater that I remember. Yeah.
And how was that first time? You got memory of that one?
It was great. It was just like when I was a kid and got hooked on fishing. One trip down here, and I was into it. And actually, the second time I came down here, I had it was my catfish boat, a little freshwater boat I had, a V-bottom 14-foot boat with a 20 horsepower Mercury.
Was that one the aluminum?
Oh, it was aluminum for sure.
Okay, all right. So just making sure.
I didn't know there was anything else but that at that time. And we brought that thing down here as a little tiller with a...
This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself preparing for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a visit at www.gordyandsons.com.
A V-bottom boat,
yeah.
And we go across the bay and get out. As we progressed a little bit, I discovered wading also. Mm-hmm. So we'd go, and as I discovered shallow water, we just bail out of that thing. And almost every fishing trip involved, some kind of wade, or sometimes we'd wade for a mile or something, and come back and get the boat. And what
the boat looks like a speck in the distance.
Yeah, and kind of ironically, as we, years later, as it became a sight caster and started fly fishing and what have you, we kind of did the exact same thing.
Yeah,
back then, it seems like we waded a lot more than everybody does now with the onset of the poling boats and the shallow water boats and what have you. I don't see near as many people, including myself, that just bails out of the boat and gets out and walks for a long distance, even though they do wade.
I totally agree. And I think that the modern poling skiff is completely to blame. And I love poling skiffs. You see the one in the garage, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But just recently, I've started fishing with different folk. Most notably, like someone who's been a big influence for me recently is Cruz Lamas. And Cruz just walks everywhere.
Well, it's funny you bring up Cruz's name because he is the marathon wader.
Bro, literally. Bro.
No, I've seen Cruz years ago. I haven't seen Cruz in a long time, but I'd be out fishing years ago and I'd see his boat, but we couldn't find him. He would be so far away that I knew he was out there somewhere, and many times I picked up, and you can ask him, I'd finally see him out there somewhere, and I'd go by and holler at him and see if he needed a ride back to his boat. He almost always wanted a ride back,
That's so funny because, like, again, I just started. I probably fished them for the last 3 weeks, and it's so funny because, like, I'll start walking and I'll take my time slowly, and he'll be quarter mile down the way within minutes, and it's just
he blazes a trail,
but he catches fish.
Oh, for sure.
I'm working it slow. I'm catching half as many fish. It's like, what am I doing wrong? So it's just very funny.
You're not doing anything wrong. But I will tell you that because you do walk slow, back in the day when we waded more, we didn't cover near as much ground. Of course, now it was different then. There wasn't as many boats and traffic out there on the water as there is now. But, we'd go out there and fish or walk for maybe an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours if there's some fish out there. And you turn around and look, and you might just be 200 yards from the boat.
Yeah.
And I just don't experience that much anymore.
Yeah, well, man, I can imagine. I mean, it's very seldom that ever happens, and when it does happen, I feel like usually the conditions are conditions that make the redfish not really want to eat, or they're post frontal, where they're actually like that stacked up so close to the skiff. Like just recently, we had a day where we were, surrounded by quite a good number of fish, like upwards in the hundreds, and we only fed 4. Granted, we had a lot of shots at trout and we caught 2 good ones. But for the redfish, it was the most bewildering thing. Like
I gotta tell you, I've heard that story before. And I've seen it too. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that has to do with the frontal, like frontal stuff and whatnot. But we're getting sidetracked. This is your podcast.
No, it's fine. It's great. But back to the wading thing.
Yes.
We head out for the day, and as a rule of thumb, I'd run the boat until and I knew areas I wanted to go to, but the minute we started pushing a wake or thought there was something going on, we just stopped every time. Just stopped, maybe pole for a little bit,
Yeah,
and then just
until
get
you
out
get
and walk
back
and
into
get
them
out
for a
and walk
bit.
because we had the confidence. And of course, a long time ago, there was less of a chance of somebody running close to you in another boat.
Mm-hmm.
So the investment in time you made by getting out of the boat and starting to walk kind of paid off because it was a little more private back then.
Yeah, it was a much more stealthy approach, which is wading. Wading is like the utmost, most stealthy approach. Or go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that one of the best things you do sometime when you're seeing even just a few fish is just to stop and not even wait at all.
Stake it off?
Well, no, I'm talking. Well, when you're out walking.
Sorry.
No, when you're walking and you see some fish and catching some fish, it pays sometimes just to stop and wait because they're probably moving one direction or the other. And if you're walking downwind, which you normally would be if there's any wind, the fish are probably pointed towards you, and historically they'll be coming at you. And so sometimes you can just, if you're patient enough, can just stand still and let them come to you. You know?
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say about waiting before we keep going, because it's a very big and broad topic that we can get into, but I still want to try to grab most of the story from the aluminum skiff days and how you ended up in the shallow sport and stuff like that. But on the waiting thing, the coolest part is having that lower point of view. I think you're like 3 to 4 foot off the water, off the level of the water versus 6 to 8 or 9 foot over. Whenever boats run by, you can start to pick up the fish coming towards you and stuff like you can the best way to put it is wading lets the flat come to life around you. When poling means that you have a glimpse in a window of time on that flat.
A shorter window.
Exactly. That's the big difference for me.
And when you're of course, you have a different window that you're looking at when you're walking. But even when you're poling the boat or guiding, and you've got a couple of people with you, and typically fly fishing, there'll be one up on the forward deck and maybe somebody sitting in the middle of the boat watching and helping spot fish. But I'll tell you that all three of those people at different heights will see different things.
Yeah, different vantage points.
Right. And when I was guiding a lot, one of the main things I had to get the person on the front of the boat do, on the bow of the boat, the guy with the rod, is to aim low. In other words, he doesn't need to be looking for tails 200 yards away.
Well, that's my job.
Or the guy or his friend sitting in the middle of the boat.
I agree.
That's a great activity for him.
Yeah, unless they have a spinning rod. Then
well, that's cheating. He can't do that.
Okay, right. So let's go to the we're back when you're one of those first couple times you're in the lower Laguna. You still got the aluminum skiff. Kind of tell me the progression between the days of the aluminum skiff up until when you decided to start moving into the shallow sport and then poling it.
Well, part of it had to do with what kind of fishing you were doing.
Okay.
So when I first come down here, who knows what we were doing? We might be using bait or artificial lures and just trying to go fishing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it kind of evolved into sight casting. And
how did you get into that? What made you say, all right, I got to go skinnier. I got to do something different.
It was from walking, back to wading, which we don't keep talking about that. But that evolved from wading and moving slower and having a chance to see fish. And of course, redfish will give you some good opportunities to see them without actually having to see them.
Yeah. They play nicely.
And then what happened probably in about 1983 or 4, right in there somewhere,
I
was with somebody that was... I'm sorry.
I said during the freeze, but I overshot that for a second.
No, I can't. There was 2 of them in the
83 and then 87, 88.
Well, this was after the freeze.
Okay,
probably 84 and before the second one.
Yes.
And I was with somebody fishing, and one of the guys was fly fishing, and of course, I was ever how many yards.
Do you remember his name?
Do I?
Do you remember his name?
It was probably Gary Bezeski.
Okay, Gary Bezeski.
Yeah, the guy from Harlingen.
Yeah. Okay.
His family was here and operated a business here for years. And in fact, I know the whole family.
Wow.
In fact, he's got a brother that still fishes out here and what have you. For a long time. But anyway, so I was with these people. Yes. One of them was fly fishing. And man, he was nabbing fish. We didn't catch a ton of fish, but he was nabbing fish just as well as any of us. And, he had the fly rod and all that. And I'd already fly fished. at home, I had a little fly rod and we perch fish, perch and bass and what have you, an old fiberglass rod and what have you. And so I was familiar with fly fishing a little bit, or from watching Kurt Gowdy on TV, fly fishing for steelhead somewhere, on the West Coast. But
if you're enjoying this episode or any others and want to support the project, I would highly encourage you to check out my new book, Laguna. 288 pages with over 300 images and illustrations, containing excerpts by Eric Glass, Chuck Nizer, Tim O'Brien, Bill Gamble, Ben Paschal, Ryan Sparrow, Michaela Elliott, Rick Hartman, Jaco Lucas, John Pilmer, Corey Bauman, Brian Robinson, and myself. Available at select stores, or you can order it directly at buylagunabook.myshopify.com.
That's about all I knew about it. And so after that day with the person that with the fly rod had its success out there, I immediately went and bought an 8-weight rod and put a reel I already had, a Fluger Medalist.
A Fluger Medalist.
Yeah, and it didn't even have a palming rim or anything. So, you had to watch out for the handle. It'd break your finger or something. So, and I used that rod for a long time. Yeah.
Well, okay, so you get into you got into the sight fishing, then Gary brings the fly rod. At this point, you're still in the aluminum skiff? You're still walking out of it? Or have you moved on to the shallow sport?
No. Now, I will tell you, between the aluminum skiffs, which I had probably 3 that I operated down here before I got into fiberglass boats. But I will tell you, before the little shallow sport that I'm running now, I had a new water boat. I had a curlew. In fact, it was the first curlew that came out of a mold.
Really?
Yes, I was number 1. And,
no kidding.
Yeah, and Tim Clancy, which it's a long story how I knew him, but he knew I was wanting to get more of a dedicated boat to saltwater, a flats boat. Okay. And he says, "Don't do it." He says, "Wait." And I go, "What's up?" And sure enough, he had a sheet metal, a pipe welding shop for sport boats and all that. He was
a Proline
custom aluminum, and he was an excellent craftsman. But anyway, he had in this little welding shop that he had. Back in the back, he was working on that first boat. Actually the first boat was
Avocet, right?
Avocet.
Yeah.
And that's the one that I saw him working on, and it was behind curtains and nobody could see it or anything. He wouldn't even hardly show it to me. But we got to talking about, more of a flats boat, more of a
skinny water boat.
Well, no freeboard and less wind sail area and what have you. And he developed the curlew, and I waited for that thing and waited, and he finally did it, built a plug and ran the plug. And when he was ready to go, I was first in line. I guess I was probably the only one that even knew about it.
Yeah.
And I operated that boat for about 10 years. And then as that boat wore down and I decided to sell it, I went without a boat for a little while, then picked up the little an old classic 15 shallow sport. And
you made that switch, or you decided to keep the smaller skiff just because of the maneuverability?
Yes. Yeah. And I'll tell you, that was still a little bit before the poling skiffs got real popular. It's not that there wasn't any, but it.
Well, you remember what year it was? Give or take, I forgot what year he brought the curlew to market, but I know that I
picked up the curlew in 2002.
Okay, so 1 year after Hell's Bay brings the Waterman and shows the Waterman skiff at the Shallow Water Expo in Houston, I think.
Oh, really?
I believe so. Yes.
Well, I wouldn't know that, but yeah.
Sorry, I'm just.
No, that's okay. But and so I've kind of stuck with the platform. I'm going to call them a platform boat. As opposed to a poling skiff. I still look to this day, I look at them and think, you ought to be in that because it's so much easier to pole and the flexibility and all that. But on the other hand, I do other things besides just fly fish and just pole the boat. And also I take all kinds of people fishing with me, from very young people to old people. And so I'm still into the wide platform, a little bit more conventional. Less rocky, less tippy, stuff like that. And I totally agree. And you can you catch a fish, you can walk around the boat real fast and also step on and off of it real easily.
Well, yeah, and again, no sides or anything.
Yeah, no freeboard, so it's pretty handy in that respect.
So we're talking about skiffs. Now we chronologically,
okay,
we were when Tim gives or sells you the curlew. So try to run me through those couple of first years when you were fishing it, kind of what the fishing was like and stuff. And I want to kind of know about that window before you move into before you sell that and then get into the shallow sport.
Well, that between 84 when I bought that 8-weight and 2002 when I got the curlew, I evolved a long way in the fly fishing world personally for myself, and changed my whole outlook on what fishing means to me and the whole.
Do you remember what your outlook was in the beginning?
What's that?
Do you remember what your outlook was in the beginning?
Well, I mean, just like a lot of other people, probably from the beginning, fishing was very exciting and fun, but it was also a way to catch food.
Yeah.
And
that's the truth.
And that was, I mean, I'm old enough that there was a day when a lot of people fished for fun, but also because they wanted to put something on the table, And I'll just be totally honest, I wasn't. Be. I wasn't born a catch and release, born again fly fisherman, So that's kind of how that evolved, but.
So then, so you went from the all right, this is a catch to keep mentality to what?
Well, the fly fishing game kind of helped teach me that. And, kind of the old saying, I'm not mad at the fish anymore. And that, and the longer and older I got fishing, that became less of an issue about how many you caught and whether you're putting them on a stringer or whatever. And it evolved into a sport more for me, sport and entertainment. And to this day now, that's just about all it is for me. But I will tell you, I mean, I still kill some fish.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you should.
Man, anything wrong with it?
There's nothing wrong with it. And if you don't, you're just giving them to somebody else. Well, I shouldn't say it like that, but your share is
getting taken up by someone else.
Is getting taken up if you don't, enjoy one every now and then or whatever. In fact, I've got a deep V boat that we go 3 or 4 times a year. We go snapper fishing.
I mean, that's pretty awesome, though. I totally get that. That makes total sense.
But I will tell you, sometimes when we're snapper fishing, it's just bottom fishing with bait, trying to catch some food, some fish to take back.
Absolutely.
And it's fun. But we will stick some 10 weights on the boat, up on the top of the boat. And when we're done kind of for the day and we're anchored up and we've been chumming all that
all
stuff,
up on top.
we'll try to pick up one on the fly rod. And that's a whole different deal, catching a hard running fish
that swims down
in deep water.
Yep.
As opposed to in 12 inches of water. A redfish will run, 50 feet and stop and turn around and get a bunch of grass on your fly line and all that stuff. But out in the Gulf, you catch a decent sized fish out in deep water. It's a good way to test. Know. Yeah, it's a good way to test out your fly rod, fly equipment.
I totally agree. Now that window between, I believe, 84 and 02. What was the freeze like in 89? The twin freezes. So going through that, what did you see?
I think the one I remember was 89, and I think it was a pretty big deal. And you always see the images of all the dead fish and what have you washed against the shores and what have you. Of course, that was big time. But I'd like to. What little I know about this is something I do know about it is that it's a natural event.
Oh, yeah.
So whether it's a freeze or a hurricane or a drought or whatever might happen, I don't get too excited about a natural event like that near as much as I do about human behavior. And that the natural things affect the environment. And so do the humans, as we all know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the natural stuff is something I can't do anything about.
You think you can do something about the human stuff?
Well, but I try to be concerned about the human stuff.
All right, you stay concerned about LNG. Go try to do something.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about a little smaller
I know.
scale.
I'm playing.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, where were we gonna go with that?
Well, we keep trying to talk about that gap,
that window.
Yes,
I want to know.
I get
I want to know the Ray box experience. I want to know the things that you saw, like fish behavior that you may not see now, and stuff that maybe you miss from that window of time. That's 2 decades of fishing.
Well, here's where I was going to go with when I mentioned from '84 to 2002. There was a lot of years in there when it was not back to human behavior. There wasn't near as many people fishing the flats in particular. And I mean, I can tell you about more days than I can remember of pulling into maybe with a little south wind into South Peyton Bay. And I would never run into the bay with a boat, no matter which boat I had at the time. I mean, you could pull in there on a nice morning and come in the first cut, shut it down, crawl up on the platform. And I don't know how many times that I went out there and did that and never cranked the engine again. You'd fish till 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning and never touch the starter switch on the motor.
Wow.
And that's what's different now. And not only is there more boats, which that's a whole nother subject, but it's the way the people use them as well. That's what I was talking about, how that affects things as much or more than the natural things as far as the fishing goes.
And I'm all ears.
And it might not. And people will tell me, they go, oh boy, it's all these years and all this changes and the fish are, not used to how it used to be. You got to remember the redfish, most of them just have a short stay here in the bay.
Yeah.
So everything that's going on now, they're conditioned to that from the get-go.
Interesting.
I mean,
it makes sense. I get it.
That's the way I see it. And look, I'm not going to get into a science conversation because you'll see how little I know about the actual science of things.
Yeah.
But just back to behavior stuff, the boats running around and all that. You catch a morning out there when nobody's burned a shoreline or come too close to you or whatever. It's a whole lot like it was forever ago.
Really?
I think so. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point.
And I don't feel uptight or anxious about the fact that it's more boats and all that. So if somebody stays out of my way and, doesn't do something stupid out there, it's totally enjoyable for me. And the fish seem to behave exactly the same as the old days, except the old days, so to speak. It would happen. You'd have those days more often.
A lot more often.
Yeah. And that's always my big go-to story is the fact that you go in and cut the motor off and never go in. You don't go looking around and running around looking for fish and all that. But it has become a little bit more of a necessity just because of the, you can have something going on and one guy can come change your whole day.
No. Yeah. 100%.
You can be fishing the dumps out there and, on a nice day without many boats, and you can either side, inside or outside the dumps. And if there's fish there, very well, you fish that all morning.
Yeah.
And one person can come through, of course, change that. So that's what makes it predominantly different than it used to be. And part of that's, too, the onset of all the shallow water boats.
I also agree.
That's a downside. I think the good side is I seems like I don't see as many prop scars and whatnot out there because of the shallow water boats.
Yes.
They're running around where they shouldn't be running sometimes, but I don't think they're tearing it up as much as when people in the bigger boats would get stuck out there in the middle on the east side and idle out.
Yeah.
And just cut a. I'm even just talking about just trying to get out.
I'm talking about just trying to spin it up, and they can't get the ass off the ground.
Mud all over everybody in the boat.
Mud spraying, got mud rain.
Boy.
One of the things I'm curious about is if you have any personal anecdotes with big trout behavior. like what you saw back then? Because that's one of the few things I totally agree with what you said about how, you know, some of the areas you can get into early in the morning, especially like a Monday or a Tuesday. And I've had a couple of days and like probably like 20, 25 days in the last 4 months where I've truly felt like I was one of 5 boats out there all day. And the fishing got really, really, really interesting because you would see the fish start to pattern themselves and they would start to act more comfortable. They'd get in bigger groups. They'd let you get closer. One of the points you made earlier about waiting for the black drum on the sand when they come in. Mm-hmm. Well, if you walk for them consistently, they're going to keep pushing away ever so slightly. So whenever they got really comfortable, all you had to do is just stay in one spot and they'd be roaming around and they'd come right up to you. Right. It's like, oh, wow, they actually, you know, do want to play the part versus like what you expect when you fish Saturday, Sunday only.
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes just to prove that point, when you're through with your wade and you're walking back to the boat, you'll see fish right where you just walked through too. Mm-hmm. So they're coming at you and maybe parting around you and just getting right back on course. You know, they'll be heading right back the same direction, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But let me tell you about the trout.
Yes,
you asked about
yes,
it, and it sounds like you're the trout man for sure.
I ain't about. Cruz has been helping me become the trout man. I'm just learning as much as I can.
But I learned something recently. I don't know if I learned it, but I saw it firsthand like it is right now. It's an extremely low tide,
like negative 0.5 right now, negative 0.6. It's crazy.
Yeah, but you know, usually I see that like around the winter solstice, you know, like December 20th, around Christmas and first of the year. Seems like the last 2 years it's been a little later. But here I am talking about science, and I
agree because if you remember in October we had like there was no northerns, nothing came in. That barometric pressure was like super, super high, and it was just like you would get out there. And I'd fished with Sally Black, and she said she had told me before I went up. She goes like, "Hey, like, you know, barometric pressure's pretty fucked. Like, might not be worth coming." And I was like, "I'm still gonna go." But she kind of explained, the way she explained it was like, "Man, this whole month, like these fish wake up every morning, or you know, like our sun comes up, and these fish every morning think, wow, something bad's gonna happen. A front's coming, or you know, something like that, and they don't eat, and they don't eat." Mm-hmm. And then they eat at night. So it was like for October, we never had any northerns. Nothing ever brought the mullet back south. At least that's what I assumed. And it felt like we were, you know, beating a dead horse for like a month. And so I agree. I feel like, you know, the tides or not tides, but like I think it has to do with like the wind and pressure and stuff. Why the water's delayed.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So speaking of Sally, she used to come and fish with me 2 or 3 years in a row on her vacation.
Really?
She'd come with her sister. And the reason I mentioned it, you brought her up, but she caught a very big trout, very nice trout on her fly with me.
I mean, yeah, she's a trout woman right there.
She's a good fisher. You know, besides being a good guide, she's a great fisherman, you know.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
We were talking about trout behavior.
Oh, yeah. Well, so one thing I discovered, and of course we get sidetracked, but on a real low tide at the north end of Peyton, it was, extreme north end, the end of the dumps and what have you. Mm-hmm. It falls off into what did you call that, West Bay for Port Mansfield. Yeah. And there's kind of a little gradient there to where on a super low tide, it creates another flat out there. And there's some potholes in it. And I fished that thing with somebody. We just didn't have anywhere to go fishing. You couldn't even run your shallow boat through Peyton hardly. You just were kicking up grass and mud and what have you. There's no fish in there that we could we could fish. And we got up there and I started poling around that kind of that edge, which seems like from that last spoil in Peyton's around, it seems like it runs to the northwest, kind of that edge. It kind of falls off a little bit.
Is it kind of like a crater, sort of?
Yeah,
it kind of craters.
It's curved, and when the water conditions are right, it's full of potholes out there. And I tell you, one time for a couple of days, that thing was just full of trout, and you know they'll lay around the edges of those, looking to ambush bait fish, piggy perch or mullet or whatever might swim through there. But we could really see it good because it was so shallow that day. And they were actually in the potholes. And we were pulled through there, and we did it several times. They'd go right back in there. So, we fished that, and they wouldn't go away. Now, it was hard to catch them. We did catch a couple, but I'm talking about like poling through there 4 or 5 times. But a trout, if you're poling along and not spook, but if they pull away a little bit, or if you cast at them and they keep moving, I was talking about when you're waiting to stop and wait. Now, even when you're pulling a boat and you see a trout, you might wait on that thing because that fish will sometimes circle right back around to whatever it was interested in over there and will come back to you.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't do that as much as I should, but or maybe go out the direction you saw the fish pull off. Now, if it spooks and
like bolts,
if it bolts and pushes away way out there, forget it. But if they're just idling around out there, it's worth.
I love seeing them do that.
Oh yeah,
I have some really cool drone footage I can show you.
Yeah, Loch Ness monster.
Yes, I totally. Like, it's a snake, man.
You got the dorsal fin and then another tail and all this stuff, and you can tell how big the fish is when they're like that. They're floating around on top of the grass. Oh boy,
so cool, man!
Yeah, no, it's fun.
I totally agree. It's cool to me because like I've started to realize that it's not. I mean, it's a semi-rare behavior. Like it's not an everyday behavior. There's a lot of conditions that go into it. But not only that, like there are not very many places in the world that you can see them act like that. And so ever since I realized that, maybe like a couple years ago, it makes me appreciate it even more. Like just recently, I was fishing with Cruz and Alex. And Alex was on the bow. And we got a shot at a fish over grass, snaking around, and it was so cool because the more you see it, the more you can kind of really appreciate the little nuances of each fish. But every time this fish would kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to say change direction, but it was almost like just like scoot a little bit. Her top fin would flare, and it would flare, and you'd see it, and I'd be like, oh, it's a big trout. Oh my God, that's a big trout. And she swung at the fly too, which was really, really cool. But those fish to me are kind of what make it. And so my goal for during the trout mating season is to try to or during the spawn is to try to film that behavior and like truly do it right to where in case the LNG stuff ruins the whole fishery, there still will be documentation of them actually doing that.
Well, keep your fingers crossed. I think we're going to survive all that.
I know. I'm being like kind of like a doom and gloom in that extreme, but realistically, it's because like I feel like it's so cool to be able to portray a fish. I mean, it's tatted on my forearm. I feel it's so cool to portray a fish that I have so much passion for. You have so much passion for, and so many other people do. But you're portraying it in like an unbothered light, and them just doing their own thing. I think that's so cool.
And it's so enjoyable. I mean, just like going back to what we were talking about earlier, the extreme is you go fishing for some food.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The exact opposite, polar opposite of that is to go out there and
just take a picture.
Just watch a fish swimming around. It's better than an aquarium.
But when you put it like that, it sounds. I feel like I gotta change my course of action. The trout behavior to me is a really cool one. Mostly because after the freeze that first year, I was scared that we weren't gonna see trout tailing on stingrays anymore because I didn't see it all year, and you can call that like being naive because I was 21 and I was thinking, oh my God, the world's over, fish are done. But a year later, they started doing it again, and it was like, oh, this is cool. Like like you said, it's a natural thing. It's a cycle. And
I think part of the fish decomposing, the worst part of the freeze where all the fish die. I mean, I think as part of the natural event, I mean I think that supplements the growth of the nursery for the crabs and shrimp and all the things that come along after that.
But then feed the other
It's kind of like a lot of rain. We're not. We don't. Part of the salinity here is that we don't have a lot of water that comes into the lower Laguna, as opposed to the middle and upper coast where you've got
a bunch of passes and stuff,
well, passes, but you've got 4 or 5 major rivers that come into the bays. And so just any kind of rain or rise in the river will always supplement those bays with fresh water, which is, imperative to the crab and shrimp reproduction and what have you. So whether it's fish kill or by a freeze, or a flood or whatever, you can almost count on it within a reasonable amount of time being some of the best, forage for the fish and the best fishing that comes along.
Interesting.
And this just happened. We had probably, now it's probably been about 6 years, but I don't know if you remember or not, but we had 2 summers, like in June, in a row where we had big rains.
Yeah.
I mean, like 10-inch rains or more.
Well, the biggest rain we had was 2023. That one, that's historically on NOAA. It's the highest Relitos Bay has ever read at 3 foot, 3.1.
But you can always count on a few months later start to see more crabs and shrimp.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Now, real quick, back to kind of like the earlier days when you were doing it before the curlew, essentially. Who were some names in the space that you either, looked up to or called your peers or, stuff like that?
Well, as far as saltwater, I didn't really have any heroes, so to speak, until I was fly fishing. And of course, the old timers was all there was. I mean, this generation now of fly fishing, or this day of fly fishing, there's all kind of folks out there that are really good at it and have good information and a lot to share. But back then, it was pretty much Lefty Cray and Chico and all those guys.
I get that. I was more referring to being able to hear of guys like Skipper Ray, Skipper Mock, Gib Little,
sure.
people
well,
people you call peer. That's why I'm getting it. That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
And Skipper, I mean, bless his heart, he was a big influence on me. And he would come over and help us at Arroyo Lodge sometimes. He would come over to the Arroyo and fish out of there a little bit. And I learned a ton of stuff from him. Yeah. And Skipper was, I don't know what you would call it, but I mean, he's either to himself or to get with him on the inside of his circle, was
had to be
a pretty
special.
Big deal. And at first, it was a little cold and a little touch and go at first. But as I got to know him, particularly back in the day when there wasn't as many boats out there, we'd see each other out. When he came, he was, of course, always fishing off the island. And I'd see him out there, or we knew we saw each other. We recognized each other's boats. And it got to the point where he would call me and stuff. And so that was a big deal for me.
Really?
Yeah, when the skipper would call me, he'd see... and he would notice things like he would see me maybe out after lunch, in the middle of the afternoon, maybe. You could go right out in the middle of Peyton, just out in the middle of nowhere, no particular structure or any particular spot, and you don't find fish out there. You can see good, what have you. And several times when he was out there, maybe outside the dumps or whatever, he'd see me out there, one of those deals where I don't crank my engine or what have you. Jing-a-ling-a-ling, he'd be calling, what's going on over there? So anyway, getting to know him and
well, again, him, but anybody else that kind of comes to mind, I think that guys like you, I don't have often on the podcast, and I love to try to shine a light on, people who were really doing it well back then.
Well, I'll tell you, one that had a big influence on me was Chuck Skates.
Okay, perfect.
There's a good one right there because, back to my days of coming off the island.
Yes.
You could almost count on, if you were going over towards the Cullen House or anywhere over there where you're coming across the bay, you'd almost, if Chuck was fishing, you'd almost see him first thing in the morning right off Stover's Point.
Smart man.
And him and there was the guy he fished with, and I think he's still around. I haven't seen him in years, but Gib Little, you might know Gib. And I fished, he's helped me before too, years ago. But those guys used to fish in tandem. And they could probably tell you more about it than me, but I was observing and learning. I was learning about my fly fishing and what have you. And those guys would run together, shoulder to shoulder. They'd come off the island and they would go to, particularly kind of between Stover's Point and the Cullen House. I would call that the tabletop out there. I don't know what they call it now. But
I mean, I've always called it the meadows. It's just a bunch of grass.
But there's a hump out there.
Yeah, but that's more towards like the point. Like in front of Stover's, right in front of Stover's Point, there's that big tabletop, like the old island that got eroded.
Well, anyway, those two would come off the island, and if they were fishing together, they wouldn't fish right at the point. They'd go right up to that tabletop, I was calling it, and they would stop probably 20, 30 feet from each other. And then they'd kind of, so they're making one track in there, and they'd stop and kind of pull away from each other, and then they'd both leave at the same time and go somewhere else.
So they just go around the tabletop.
Well, they'd fish the whole thing,
Wow.
Yeah. So,
and you're
but anyway, I watch those guys.
You're mentioning Gib Little fishing in tandem with Ray, or fishing in tandem with Skates?
Skates.
Really? Because I know that Ray, Skipper Ray was very instrumental in Gib Little's fishing for a while. Like I know Gib Little was on the skiff when, or was fishing with Skipper when Skipper wins Tift Grand Bay.
Oh, really?
On fly.
Yeah. Well, back then, I don't know exactly what time frame you're looking at, but
this was 99 maybe?
They were probably Jim's Pier compadres,
Yeah.
Fishing out of Jim's Pier. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit about skates. Do you have any other skate stories? I always like to try to see if I can, because I mean obviously he's not around, and I would love to try to get as much information from him as I can.
Not really.
Yeah, no. Heard. Okay, so we've been over influential people. We've talked a little bit about the aluminum boat days, going into the curlew days. How about some of the days post the curlew before you got into the shallow sport? I mean, we already went over you getting into fly fishing, but I assume that you getting the curlew was you kind of solidifying yourself, at least for a while, as a more so fly fisherman. So how was that? Yeah.
But I never lost the desire to do all kind of fishing. So I would, I don't feel like when I spin fish that I'm, trying to opt out of fly fishing or whatever. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
And actually, sight casting with a light spin rod is actually a lot of fun.
I don't disagree either. Funny enough. So like I said, when you got here, I wanted to be one of the best fly casters that I could ever be. And so I started training a lot because my outlook was, okay, I'm going to have significantly more fun if I know that my fly cast is not a limiting factor here, right? So if I know that my cast is so good that I can, essentially catch fish from 0 miles an hour, given, super tough presentations, long distance, long leaders, everything, to 30 miles an hour, Belgian cast, 9-foot leader, quick shot, boats moving 15 miles an hour. Like if I can do that, then I will be significantly happier when I'm fishing, like just because I like to fly fish, right? So, all that to say that like I'm willing to, I'm not, I don't think I'm pretentious when I say this, but like I worked at it, and I think I'm a good fly caster. I think I've proved it.
You are.
But after that, I started looking at everything from like the perspective of, and a little bit naive too, but if it's not on fly, it doesn't count. Right. I'd be like, it's not on a fly rod.
That's one way to be.
I agree. But, this is all like, years ago, like naive. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just going to say there's a couple kind of fly fishermen. One is kind of like my story, and probably Skipper Ray's. I can't speak for him.
Yes.
But you grew up as a fisherman first.
Yes.
And then you evolved into fly fishing, what have you. Now, there's a lot of fly fishermen that never touched a fishing rod in their life until they heard about fly fishing and started doing that. And that's kind of a whole different animal as far as what you're saying about, if I'm not fly fishing, I'm not. I'm not doing it correct. And those are the ones that are more likely, the ones that started just fly fishing, they're the ones probably more likely to tend to be like that.
Absolutely.
Than a lifetime fishermen.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. But like what I was getting at is like, I had that naiveness of, well, again, if it's not on fly, then it doesn't matter and whatever. Okay, well, I started meeting really good anglers, like truly good anglers, guys like Hans and Lau, and guys like Nathan Outlaw, et cetera, et cetera. And well, I learned that being a good fly angler is just one part of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And if you want to really be a good angler, like you have to, and I've said this before, like, this isn't new to me, but like it was new to me, and I'm trying to implement it in my fishing now, but it was more so like, I want to be able to be the best overall angler that I can be. And in order to do that, I kind of have to kill the ego of, I'm the fly fisherman. I only catch a fish on bugs. Cause it's cool for a while. And I think everyone goes through it, but after a while you got to grow up. Like, I really think it's just the best way to look at it.
Well, that's part of the enjoyment part. You can get to where it's not, you're so into it and so concerned about it that it's not as much fun as when you make a bad cast and see the fish come get it anyway and laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
But I want to say this too about you were talking about becoming the best caster and what have you. You got to keep in mind that in having fished with a lot of people, that most people that fly fish, your occasional fly fishermen, the ones that come down and go with the guides or whatever, they probably never pick up a fly rod except when they come down here to go fish.
Which is a problem in and of itself. But we'll get there. Yes.
Yeah. But so what I'm saying is, if you're helping somebody or encouraging them to be a better fly fisherman, maybe not the best, but become a better fly fisherman, you got to teach them that you just need to learn to cast really good at 30 feet and 40 feet and 45 feet and learn how to see the fish. That's the fishing part, because most people can't even see a fish at 100 feet, even though, a really experienced top-notch fly fisherman
can pick them out at 300. I get it. I get where you're coming from, yes.
Well, I'm talking about cruising under the surface. And
okay,
yeah. And great. If you can do that, that's great. But also, if you can just learn to be above average and make decent, short, medium length casts, you can be a very successful fly fisherman.
I agree. But I'm push back a little bit.
Here we go.
Who decides where the average is? Like, where is the average mark?
It doesn't make any difference. You're just going to try to get your, I guess going back to what I was saying is, if you could encourage people to practice a little bit and not read articles about how to cast 100 feet and double haul and cast it, out of your sight, they can learn to become successful fishermen, fly fishermen.
And I don't disagree at all. In fact, I think that my pushback was actually kind of more leaning towards the getting people to learn how to fly cast, because my whole thing is, I agree. I'm willing to bet that most people catching one redfish on fly, like the skills that it takes to catch a redfish on fly, like just genuinely 25, 30 foot cast, given that you're on a skiff and not walking, you're already ahead of like at least 60% of the people, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
But to me, now I see that and I'm like, I really wish that more people, I really wish that there was more of a innate desire to improve at the sport of fly fishing, baked into the vibe of fly fishing, if that makes any sense. I know it's abstract, but what I'm saying is I wish that the fly fishing space pushed people to get better consistently, but realistically, like, again, it's only the guides. The guides are the ones who are,
but see, you were talking earlier about yourself and trying to be the very best caster and all that.
And I know I'm coming at it from a biased angle.
That's okay, but that's where you get a lot of enjoyment.
Yes.
And a lot of people that never practice or never get to where they can cast very good never realize that moment.
Yes.
That you make a nice 50-foot cast right in front of the fish and he comes and takes it. Well, a lot of those first fish they catch, they just got the fly out there and the fish.
Somehow, yes.
Somehow it happened. The magic happened. They caught the fish, but they weren't near to the point like it's the extreme opposite of what you're talking about, being the very best caster and this and that about, as good as you can be. Whereas trying to get somebody that just can't do it to that point, I was just saying there's some great middle ground in there. And if they find success at that, they're more apt to be energetic and tend to want to maybe get better at it.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying in that aspect. And funny enough, like I'm hearing myself talking again, I'm coming at it from a biased angle. But like, for example, I recently was just fishing with the guys from the Element Wild podcast, and they're not great fly casters. I mean, 20-foot cast, 25-foot cast. And it's funny because like one of them caught their first redfish on fly with me and their first redfish back to back. And I got so much enjoyment out of watching a fish eat at 15 foot because we had missed like 15 fish at about 20 foot. And it was like, oh my God, it worked. And like, you kind of, like whenever you're not the one in charge and you can't like direct that fly in 6 inches from that fish's face, it's almost like, this doesn't sound silly, but it's almost like you're gambling. Like it's almost like you're
but you are in charge. I mean, you put them there, and you're encouraging the cast and encouraging them to make another cast
and biting your tongue,
and then the close, right, biting your tongue, But the great part of that short cast, back to that 15 or 20 foot catch, particularly some of the early ones, boy, that's full of things to see. The fish comes up, flares. He's trying to suck that fly in, and his gills fly open and what have you.
Mud everywhere, water splat.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I totally agree. I guess the last thing I'll say on this is I'll tell a story about when I had a conversation with Owen Gaylor. Owen, his outlook is more so like deemed to where mine is, in where he was like kind of upset at the fact that it was like, man, why do I have, clients who come down, fish with me and don't practice at all? But, on the same trip that we'll be fishing, they're going to tell me that, they practice 2-3 months out, their archery for a bow hunt, for a tag they got, from a raffle. And it's like, his thing was like, it didn't feel like they were giving, this might sound a little biased from our perspective, but it didn't feel like they were giving our sport that effort, if that makes, and that's kind of what I was getting at with like the whole, like who decides where the average is, if that makes sense. Well, but that was all I really wanted to
and another sport that suffers from exactly what you're talking about is golf.
Yeah,
that's an individual sport like fly casting. And it's very similar too. You got a shaft and it bends, and knowing how to make it bend will make the ball or the line go or whatever.
But that's
why most people are not good golfers either, because they just don't get the bug and have this desire to go practice and be better at it.
Yeah,
and both of them. Now I will tell you. And I tell this to people all the time, your odds of being good at golf are not so great. But in fly casting, the odds are a lot better, because if you get a little bit of good instruction, decent instruction, and you'll go out and practice a little bit, you can become a good fly caster. Odds are you won't ever be a good golfer. But there's also other people that have the cast. I mean, we're in an environment where
we can practice every day, essentially.
Well, but everybody in your circle is probably a really good fly caster. Okay?
I'm going to be honest with you, Ray, and some of my friends are going to laugh. I don't think that's true. I think a lot of my friends are, okay.
But I'm talking about looking through your book.
Yes.
Maybe not your friends, but I'm talking about people that work the area, the guides or whatever. It's a pretty high level of ability to fly fish.
I agree.
They're really good.
To get to the level where you can, put projects together, film, and get creative. I mean, you have to be good. Like, you have to be good at the rod. You have to be good on the camera. You have to be good on the pole. Like, you have to be like
you got to know how to fish.
Exactly. Like
that's all you're doing is fishing.
Yes, but there's like so many aspects, and one of the coolest things that I've found is like in this pursuit of trying to create and build out really cool things from a fishery that I have so much love for, like I've realized that it's made me in turn better at some things, better at the camera, better at polling, better at like these little nuances that you wouldn't really understand unless you're trying to achieve or, perform at a very high level in a teamwork setting. Because you just said fly casting is a singular person sport, and I agree. But it's funny, you put 3 people on a skiff and all of a sudden it's a team. It's we caught that fish. It's we did, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so
and everybody gets enjoyment out of it. Whether you're whether
agree.
sitting on the ice chest or on the pole or whatever. It's a great deal. And there's a whole nother element of people about casting is there's some really good fishermen and some really good fly fishermen that aren't from here that do different kinds of fly fishing. And you can see how custom this fly casting down here is for the sport to be good at it compared to somebody maybe that's small stream fish.
Oh, I agree.
And I tell you what,
it's almost beneficial.
I would just as soon teach somebody from scratch how to fly cast as somebody that
instead of
you don't really need to mend your line,
You know what's funny? I was having a conversation with Mark Jeremy. He comes for 6 months out of the year and then goes back to Alaska. And I was telling him, I was like, man, I would really like to bring down like a switch rod, like an 11-foot switch rod, and start throwing really big streamers, just 2 hands, and take the hardest part out of the wading game, because the wading is so fun. Like the last big trout I caught wading. But it does because of the variation in depth, it can kind of screw you over sometimes, depending on if you slack a little bit on your cast, and now at 45, 50 foot, your fly's hitting the water and like your timing's off and stuff like that.
Trying to get ready to strip the line.
Exactly. And especially if you have like for example, some of the wades I'll go on, I'll have like the little waste basket with me. So it'll be sitting on my left hip and just like trying to find it when it's annoying. Like it really is. And so I was wondering, I was like, man, it would be so much easier. Granted, you wouldn't be able to fish like, close shots, but like it would be so much easier if I could just.
Yeah, but relate it back to just fishing with a spin rod or whatever.
At that point,
you could probably get a little heavier spin rod, a little bit longer, and do
the same thing,
and put a little bit heavier line on it, and take some of the sport out of it. And you could cast it further, and you could do some stuff that you can't do with a 6-foot 9-inch spin rod with 6-pound line on it. and we were talking about Wade a while ago. That was the first person I saw down here use a 6-foot rod with 6-pound monofilament line on it.
Really?
Spin rod. Yeah.
Really? Was he record chasing at the time?
I don't think so. In fact, he wasn't guiding anymore, and he was still living down here, but he was just fishing for some fun every now and then. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have any stories with Wade?
That's one of them.
Yeah, that's one of them. Well, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot about pulling the boat from him.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
especially he's such a wader. That's so funny.
I mean, look, this goes way back, and some people, you'll probably think this is silly, but I mean, I never noticed that if you turn the push pole around. I'm talking about when I was first doing this. I got a chance to go with him, and he pushed with the point of the pole. And of course now that's all I do. I very rarely use the fork unless I'm stuck in the mud or something, or stuck in grass. But I discovered it was so much quieter. Yeah. And then when you try to stop the boat or put the pole in front of put the pole forward to kind of slow down or whatever, it's just really a nice tip.
Oh, and Wade was actually pulling a scooter at the time too, right?
Yeah, he had an 18-foot shallow sport. It was. Yeah, it had a big old 115 Yamaha on it.
Realistically, are there any advantages to pulling a shallow sport over a pulling skiff besides the variety that you can like fish with?
Well, the obvious one's it's stable, and of course I haven't spent that much time on a true pulling skiff, enough hours to really compare them. But I will tell you, it's nice. The little bit heavier, chunkier boat, when you turn it, it'll stay turned. It's easier. It's kind of easy to stay put when you want to stay put. And the pulling skiffs, have a little bit more sail area on them. So, they're going to catch a little bit more wind. But on the other hand, when there is no wind or the conditions are really nice, it's sweet because, it's the workload's a lot less.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree there either. It's just one of those things, like, for example, like the reason I ask, because so I had, again, Wade, I've had Wade on the podcast, and I've had Tom Kilgore on the podcast. And they both, spend a lot of time on a like 8x2x4. I think it was 8x2x4. This like big fiberglass composite just deck, literally just a deck with a couple rod holders on it, and they called it the Flea. And they would let the Flea just take them down the east side for miles, and they would, I think they would leapfrog and stuff with the motorcycle and go all the way down to like basically Green Island from up here.
You talk about little homemade sleds.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is the reason I brought that up about the shallow sport advantage is because I've often wondered if those wider footprint kind of boats put out less pressure waves when you're poling, giving you better shots at, slightly bigger fish or, more trout or stuff like that. Because to go back on the wading conversation, the reason that I'm learning how much quote unquote easier it is to catch a big trout on fly wading versus on the boat, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's very noticeable how many more shots you get at fish that are willing to participate on foot versus from the skiff.
Well, think about it. How many times are you poling a skiff or involved in fishing off a skiff that you just can't quite control it, or you got there a little bit too late and you're too close, and that window is like literally a few seconds.
Yeah.
And then it's over with.
Yeah. It's like,
but when you're walking, that might not be the case unless you just overwalk it.
And I totally agree. Like I'll tell a quick story of the last big trout I caught, which was yesterday or the day before. I was walking with Cruz and Glenn Harrison, and we had I just landed one that was 28.5.
Man,
I'll show you a picture. That fish looked so beautiful because the top was so black and the bottom was so white. It was such a contrast. And I know, like, Wade on our podcast, he would be like, yeah, man, that's a big black wolf. And I was like, I love that you said that, So anyways, we had just landed that one. I'm still on a high. I was high fives all around.
Was it fat?
Oh, yeah. That fish was, at least 8. Like, big fish. I'll show you a picture right now. Anyways, well, we go up a little bit, come back down with the wind because it just shifted east. And we had gotten a shot at one with it like snaking around. And then, so Glenn was on the front, I was poling. We didn't get close enough to that fish. And then we were like, man, let's just walk it, right? So we start walking. And mind you, it's cloudy. It's slicked out though. But it's one of those days where it's so cloudy that like there's no glare on the water. So when you're walking, you can see from here to like the air conditioner thing, right? So 30 foot, right? Mm-hmm. Anyways, walking down down a line, and off to my right, I literally watch a small little trout hop in the middle of the pothole, and I'm like, oh, how neat! Like, it'd be cool if I caught another one, and I throw at it and it spooks off. I'm like, oh, whatever. Then I don't move. I just keep looking at that area, and I don't know, maybe 15 seconds later, I thought I saw the same fish. Like, I really thought it was the same fish, and I was like, oh, cool. Through, strip, pause, strip, pause, strip, pause, strip, pause, strip. And the fish just moseyed over, went and ate it. Mm-hmm. Set it. And then I felt that fish. And I was like, oh no, it was a big one. So
it turned out to be bigger than you thought.
I called Cruz over. I'm like, Cruz, I got another big one. And it was awesome. But it was like that fish would not have happened if I hadn't walked. Like, if I would have been pulling, it would have been, oh, you spooked the little trout. Oh, there's a big one. That's
it could have very well, like we were talking about earlier, it could have very well been the same fish you saw right before that.
I've often wondered that, yeah.
Because they got a spot, and if something kind of pushes them off, if they don't, like you say, to spook and push a bunch of water and get out of there, they'll come right back.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned fishing with Jason Rydell is, or what he said helped his numbers a little bit, was whenever they kind of give that first spook, if you don't cast and you wait for them to kind of settle down for a second,
sure,
or at least I think the way he explained it was, let them tell you what direction they're going first. I think that's the way he explained it. That makes so much sense. And it kind of ties into a story that I heard from Bud Rowland, where he was fishing with one of the news guys. I forgot who, and they were on the new water, and they're drifting in South Bay, and they saw like a fish that was 32 swim under them, like 15 foot, and they're like, don't move a muscle. And the fish goes under, and then swims another 15 foot. And then Bud just kind of hits it with a backhand cast and big explosion. He thinks it spooked, and next thing you know, it ate it. Mm-hmm. But it was because, you didn't give that fish, like that fish at one point was literally looking at you being like, what is that? What is that? Didn't
care.
Yeah, just like, basically saying like, throw something in front of me, do it. But then when they truly move away and they look elsewhere, you start to realize, man, if I just fish it smarter, you might turn over more opportunities and more shots at those bigger fish. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm going on and on about the trout stuff, but
you're still on a big high.
Yeah, I love
two
those
fish
things.
You've caught.
Yeah, I've caught a few, man. I really, really think those are my favorite fish because, well, here's an interesting thing, and I don't want to monologue because I don't want to take time away from your podcast. But this is one last thing I'll say about the trout. But I find that when I'm waiting, the bigger fish eat the fly deeper. It's almost like on the skiff, and yeah, actually, this is a really good point. It's almost like on the skiff that maybe difference in altitude or the difference in like from what you see or perceive or the water, whatever, anything. It's almost like when you're fishing it from the boat, you're always one strip too early, and by that I mean like you truly catch the fish on the outside of the mouth. But when you're waiting, for some, and again, it might be the height of like the rod from the, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just talking.
One thing I encourage people to do, whether they're walking or on the boat, is to keep that rod tip consistent after the cast. Because if your rod tip, and I'm telling you stuff that I know but if your rod tip's up in the air at all, a couple feet even, you got a little sway and sag in your line.
And if it gets windy too,
well, your fly is going to behave totally differently, and not only that, you're going to have a harder time setting the hook on a strip set. Mm-hmm. Okay. So even on a boat, I encourage people to keep the rod tip way down by the water. Mm-hmm. So when they're stripping the line, you've got that nice straight connection all the way to the fly.
Yeah.
So when you're walking and doing the same thing, which is easier to do when you're out walking, it's more consistent.
Are you peculiar about your leader system?
Yeah. Keep it real simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hand tie the leaders. So.
I love hand tying.
Yeah, and it's basically just kind of an exaggerated whitlock bass leader.
Ooh, I'm interested. Break it down for me.
Well, and I just saw it in his fly fishing handbook or whatever, whitlock, and I think it was an Arvis, LL Bean book.
Really?
And, it was a great diagram in there, and it's on let's say a 10-foot leader. Well, the first 5 feet is your butt section. Mm-hmm. And when I'm tying them, I use it's not so much about the weight, but it's a 40-pound, which is about a 22 or something like that, 0.22.
Oh, diameter? Yes.
Yeah, diameter. It's all about the stiffness. And I just use just kind of inexpensive, kind of stiff line, particularly down in that butt. Now, you don't want to use something like hard mason or something, because if it's too stiff, the leader will want to stand up. And it's a little harder to turn over sometimes if the butt section is too stiff. Yeah. But, a nice firm leader. So you got half of it's going to be the butt section, and then you're going to go a couple feet of the next step down, right? And then one more. And so really, all you're doing is just making a little tapered leader, and you wouldn't even have to put those other sections in there, except that tippet would be too long. You want to have a couple other little sections in there, and they might not be 2 feet long.
Yeah.
And the knot, I think, also helps.
Yeah, I think you described the same leader system that I have. I used to not care about my leader at all. And here's a really good topic I've never brought up, but it's the schools of thought. So I was very fortunate to have been influenced mainly by 2 different people in my fly fishing career, starting out, Tim O'Brien and Rick Hartman. And so Tim's look at the fishing side was, he wanted to be more technical. He wanted to kind of have the newest gear, the newest whatever, things that made you just be different. Basically, he was kind of like on that Florida wavelength, the tech and the modernity of fly fishing, if you will. Mm-hmm. And Rick was more of like the, it'll be better for me if I bleed through it type deal. Like, I say that because like, I'd be like, man, what knot should I tie? He'd be like, it doesn't really matter. Like, we're going to throw a 12-pound mono the whole way through, 8-9 foot. And
just so it doesn't break.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. Like, and at the time I was like, well, I mean, this is the guy who does it as well as he does. I got to follow his example. Mm-hmm. Well, in doing that, I realized that like, I could only really truly throw a 9-foot leader, like anything over a 9. And I just felt like I'd always have it curl over, or I'd always have an issue or whatever. Like I truly could not fish the 12-foot leader system. And it's funny that you said that you don't like hard mason. I don't fish hard mason, but I fish a step under it, which is so like at least my personal opinion is the scientific angler hard mono. Mm-hmm. And so, but I don't run 40, I run 30. And anyways, what I'm getting at is like when I changed over to that leader, mostly because of Brett Greco. So Brett Greco was the one who introduced me to like that whole system, which is, like you said, it's the stiffness. That's what matters. That's what mm-hmm. gets the turnover. Man, I really felt like that made a big deal for me. Like I really felt like my window of error just improved literally by 30%.
And when you build your own leader, you can control that.
Exactly.
If you want a longer butt section or...
Mm-hmm. So I do about six of hard mono 30, which is about a wingspan. Mm-hmm. And then I do from my left hand to like my right nipple of midsection, because I'm going to use some of it to tie off, right? So I'm going to use some for the class tippet, and then some for the butt section. Should get about 2.5 feet, and then it's another about 2 foot. So from my left hand to left nipple. So I just cut out that extra whatever that distance is, and I do that, and then that goes to the fly, and that's about a 12 maybe 13-foot leader, mm-hmm. depending on the deal. But like that was, I was like, oh wow, like I really felt like that truly helped, because it's almost like having more leader, you're in turn also slowing down the fly line. So like it, and then obviously like I also throw really big flies, so it really felt like it was just helping me get that next step. Mm-hmm. And it was because, again, schools of thought, I spent so much time, trying to like beat myself up over doing it right, doing it, 9 foot, 12-pound mono has to be, I can't care about that,
There's plenty of books that show a hand-tied bonefish leader, mm-hmm. and it might have 8 sections in there or something. It's so ridiculous.
I know.
I can't do that. And I'm the exact opposite of what you're talking about, Tim. I mean, I'm not a tech guy that all has to be perfect or whatever, Yeah. But what I will point out, one good thing about your hand-tied leader uh-huh. is if you want extra leaders, they're easy to repair, but you don't have to build a whole nother leader.
Yeah.
You can just build the last couple of sections, stick them in your pocket, and just cut it back to the butt section, and you can instantly have a new leader.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you'll lose a couple inches, but so what?
Yeah, no, and the thing is, I think especially fishing down here, you realize that mono and saltwater are not good friends. So you can catch quite a few fish on mono or like on that leader. And what I've learned is after a while, depending on the conditions, and I think it has to do with like salinity and stuff like that, like of that day. But depending on again, how you're fishing and the conditions, sometimes you'll actually have like the salt or the water start to like make the mono kind of dry. Oh, yeah. It's very strange, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Kind of chalks up.
Yeah, and then like you'll like for just recently, like the other day, I was fishing, and I had stocked a redfish that it must have been at least like 30. For like half an hour. Like there was redfish all around me, but I wanted that fish. And so I walked, slowly waited, whatever. And Glenn was watching me. Like it was so funny. It was like one of those moments where you can like, your friends are watching. It's like, watch this type. But anyways, so the fish kind of came in real close. I presented a fly, let the fish find it, ate, set the hook, and then it broke. And I was like, no way. And I looked and it broke at the hard mono. And then Cruz gets back to the boat and he goes, yeah, like, my leader broke and it's kind of really fucking up the mono. And I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense. This is recent that I've just realized this, or maybe it might be an anecdote. Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe it's too fancy a mono.
Scientific anglers. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't think it's like the next greatest thing, but damn, that fucking, man, scientific anglers, I used to not be a big fan of because they were one of the first like Rio who were doing like the half size heavy lines and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And for honestly, like for a while, again, back to the naiveness of me being a younger fly fisherman, I was like, I feel like it's cheating. And I started realizing that it really does help. Having the half heavy actually does help. And in turn, I started realizing how good of a product it really is.
And you're not really cheating until you put a natural bait on a hook on a fly rod. So I think you're safe there.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so we're at an hour 20. We've talked about a lot. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the lodge that you've built in the Arroyo, as well as, kind of how it's, made you, the person you are, how maybe the difficulties of having that lodge or stuff that may have happened as you have gone through it.
Well, that's great. We purchased that property in 2000, the fall of 2000, and I was still operating a retail store in New Braunfels. I built and operated Green Outfitters for about.
Oh, no kidding!
Yeah, I didn't know you might know that, but
I did not know. Okay,
I operated that for about 18 years,
wow.
And sold it in 2006, right around then. But so there was a transition from. When we had the store actually, the retail store purchased the property with the idea of it was going to be just strictly a fishing lodge. And we did totally full service trips. I had a customer base at the store. So we would get groups of 4 or 6 together and we'd bring them down to Arroyo City. And of course we'd do the food and the lodging and furnish the guides and the whole smear, just like we were doing travel out of Green Outfitters to Mexico and Belize and other things. So
right,
I learned a little bit about the business. So that was kind of a model for what I was doing there. And since then, it's kind of turned into more of a rental and just kind of an everyday place. Even though we do a little bit of full service, it's mostly a rental and a place where customers probably come. A lot of my customers come 2 or 3 times a year, or more.
Yeah,
so.
Well, so for example, you bought the property. What was one of the hardest things about, from the moment you sign the paperwork to have the property to the moment you can call it a full outfitter lodge? What were kind of some of or at least one of the difficulties that was presenting to you?
Well, the difficulties weren't too bad for me because historically I've been by trade, I'm a building designer and I've remodeled and built over the years off and on. So to take that on, the place needed to be reworked, remodeled. So that wasn't a big challenge for me. It was a challenge, but but it was not out of my orbit, So actually, we bought it, and by the next April, we had people coming in there.
Really?
So the transition was really smooth.
Wow. What was, honestly, I had no idea about the Green Outfitters. Funny enough, when I asked you, give me your chronological story, I'm surprised you didn't mention it at all.
Well, we just kept talking about boats and
kept talking about wading and trout and
being quiet and not spooking the fish.
Well, how was that, man? Like, what made you start Green Outfitters? Well, again, I feel like that must have been a lot harder to get off the ground than the lodge.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I did something that was impossible nowadays. I started it with little money, very little money. So it was a sweat equity project from the beginning. Okay, in fact, a lot of what I do is that. In fact, this morning I actually pulled some weeds and did some lawn work at the lodge. So I know all about it.
Building an equity.
I could write a book on that. But no, it's gone great, and back at Green Outfitters, I started it with not much. I had a person help me a little bit. Person loaned me $10,000 to get this thing open. But actually the building was a shop. I was doing work in grain. See, I could go sideways on this building stuff all day. But we were doing a lot of remodeling in grain. We worked at the grist mill and Green Hall and Green Mansion Inn. I remodeled some buildings there and what have you. And I did maintenance for some of the buildings. So, but inside this building where Green Outfitters now lives, it continues to live, we kept all our building supplies. In fact, there was pickups in there and trailers and lumber and all these supplies. And when I got permission or made a deal with the owner of the building to open the store, well, while all that stuff was in there at night after work, we built up this, put the walls up, put the electrical in, the air conditioning. And then all of a sudden, one day, about a year or so later, it was just done. No merchandise, no anything.
Wow.
But we had this building built, and a friend loaned me just a little bit of money. And it worked, from the very beginning. Didn't pay myself anything, just worked by myself many days. Wow. And every penny would go at the end of every week, or Monday, at the beginning of the week, with a little bit of sales I had, I'd use all that money to buy more merchandise. And I just kept buying merchandise over and over and over. And that's how I grew the thing. And it wasn't your conventional, take $500,000
and dump it all in inventory.
And dump it all in at one time and whatever, and hope it works.
Yeah.
This thing was low risk from the get-go.
Wow,
but it turned into a nice business, and the current owner now
is that Tiffany Yates, right?
She's running it. That's exactly right. Yes. So you knew Tiffany, but you didn't know me.
No, I didn't, man. I met Tiffany at Trout Fest. At Trout Fest last year. I actually invited her on the podcast, but she got a little busy. We ended up not being able to do it.
Yeah. But I was at Trout Fest last year for the first time.
Yeah. Oh, I was there. I was hanging out mostly with Brian Little over there with Owen and stuff at the area. At the very back of the thing, at the back of the pavilion, I think you'd call it, or whatever, the covered area.
Yeah.
And then I was also there with Sportman's Finest. And because I was actually selling my book there. So I was at the front of
we
there.
Were just right down the aisle.
I mean, I know. That's why I met Tiffany, and she was in the corner next to me, basically. Like that's where the Green Outfitters booth was.
Well, I won't go so far as to say I taught her everything she knows, because she's a great operator and a bright girl, So she's doing a great job with it, and it's taken the store to a whole nother level.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's big time and well known. That's exactly why you know about it. Is the job they've done is carrying on with it. But I'm proud to have been a part of it.
I'd be proud too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, you mentioned earlier that you had a good TFO story.
Well, back to when I was operating the store. So it was in spring of '89 we actually opened up. And for about a year or so, we didn't have any tackle in there. And now I'm full. So, go back backwards to '84 when I was telling you about kind of getting going on the saltwater. So by '89, I'm all nuts about it and everything, and want to do a little section of fly tackle in there. So we started doing it, and it probably went on for a couple of years we just add one line at a time. And in fact, I got an account with Cortland, and we sold Cortland kits and Cortland line and whatever I could buy from Cortland. That's how I got started with it. But anyway, as we evolved into more lines and what have you, Rick Pope, the founder, I guess the founder of TFO, actually walked in the store, and you'll have to fact check me on this when they actually started, but it would have been the early '90s, somewhere in there. Him and another man walked in and go, "Man, we got this new line of rods." They didn't even have a sample with them or anything, and just started telling me about it and the whole story. And I said, "You know what? I like this." And they didn't know me from Adam. They just came across me somewhere or another. And so sure enough, I bought into the line, and the whole time I was there, I sold their products. And so fast forward to 2006, I sold the store, and I was out of the retail business. So at the lodge, we were going to promote the lodge. We were going to shows like the Houston Fishing Show, or even like Trout Unlimited, the fundraiser they do. And at the shows, we were just promoting the lodge. And I still had a lot of the kick in me for the retail, So I said, well, I want to see if I can pick up a couple of lines and put a little shop at the lodge. And so that's exactly what I did. So my first go-to was TFO. And of course, by this time, Rick was gone. But they opened me back up. So I'm probably historically one of their oldest and longest customers. Of course, if you added up all the rods I sold, I'm probably one of the smallest ones they ever had. but
like we said, it's sweat equity. It doesn't matter.
No, it's just, you know, and what's kind of unique about what we do at the lodge with the tackle is that I sell one vendor at a time. In other words, I've only got one line of rods and one line of reels, and it's kind of unique in that sense. But it makes a good pop up. We have a little trailer that we put equipment in, the store in, and Arroyo City.
Was that trailer at a Houston last year? Houston fishing show?
Oh no, we talked about that. I think.
Right. I walked by it and I was like, oh, I know. And I did not admit
that was me.
Okay. All right. There you go.
It's such a big operation. I don't know how you missed it. But the rep at the time that set me back up with, and he remembered, of course, knew me from the store. So he immediately set me up with
like, TFO. Absolutely. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. And so I told him, I said, now look, you got to understand, this will be maybe the smallest fly shop in the world. You know, it's in an 8x10 bedroom at the lodge. Okay. And he goes, no, Ray. He goes, no. He goes, I've got a customer that has a vending machine only.
A vending machine?
Yeah. Oh, boy. Yeah. You package flies and put them in a vending machine and sold them out of that.
Funny.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's funny because you also, like, you see, like I've you know, been to a couple places internationally when I fished, and some of the lodges I've stayed in, you can tell, like, their outfit selection is, you know, pretty much enough to fit in an 8x10 room. Like, you don't really need that much. Yeah.
You could put a fly shop in one room.
You can put a fly shop in that corner.
Yeah. Everything else is fluff. It's kind of the way I look. Remember, I was telling you I'm not that technical about my fishing. I'll get my rod, and what's the old story? You go, well, Ray, what do you use? And I said, well, I got a Clouser minnow on right now, and I got another one in my pocket.
I got a little bit of mono, and that's it.
I got a little spool of Tiffin in my front pocket.
No pliers, just nippers.
Let's go. No, there's a little bit more to it than that.
No, I'm playing.
But I keep it pretty simple, you know.
Yeah,
and that's part of the enjoyment I get. A lot of people, you know, a lot of the enjoyment is all their stuff.
Yeah.
Their gear and what have you. And that's fine too. If it wasn't for that, there wouldn't be a fly shop anywhere.
That's also true.
Because
it'll be direct to consumer or something like that.
You got to have some customers out there.
Yeah.
If everybody was like me, there wouldn't be any. But no, you know, I'm kidding. But no, but it's been great. It's all been real organic from grassroots, you know.
Seems like it.
Yeah. And I don't know, I kind of get a kick out of that. When I was growing up, my dad was injured and was home for a while when I was starting about fifth grade, something like 11 years old or so. And we had an old pickup, and we actually started going around to yard sales and garage sales, what have you. And we just pick out the very best stuff in there, and we'd buy some things, and we started selling it. Yeah, and we did that for a while until the city busted us and shut us down. And
lame.
You know, the bureaucracy caught up with us. And then, I mean, we even got onto some other products, you know, like water coolers. That was about the time that evaporative coolers were going out, and
Yeti was coming in. The rotomolded was still not a thing.
No, but you know, Frigid Kings, and all that started making those kind of window units. So we discovered that you could get a water cooler from Sears or Montgomery Ward or anywhere, and they had all the same parts in them. And we'd, you know, in the summertime, we'd just go around and get people set up because they were converting to regular air conditioners, and we'd go around, pick them up. We had this old pickup, and we'd scavenge this stuff, take it home, we'd get 2 or 3 of them and make one like brand new evaporative cooler.
What?
We'd get all this leftover metal, take it to the junkyard and sell it. We'd have no trash or anything. We recycled every bit of it, and then we'd sell the water cooler. So anyway, the reason I tell you all that is that I kind of have a little retail bug
mindset.
Mindset there, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, let's just briefly, tell me a little bit about, Sanchez bait stand, what that was like. And it's not much to it, but I think there's a little bit of, Lower Laguna history there. Mm-hmm. And then we'll start to close it out. I only have 2 questions to close it out. Okay, that's fine.
No, kind of currently the property that where Sanchez was or is that property, some people have bought that and salvaged and have preserved both of the houses that the Sanchez brothers lived in.
Really?
So the way I understand it, the 2 brothers lived in those houses, and they were right. It's a low lot, so if it floods much, it gets up right up on those houses right in there, and literally 15 or 20 feet across a driveway was the bait stand, and it was right on the water. And for a while they had gas and everything, and they always had shrimp. I don't really know who was shrimping. There was a shrimp boat there for a while, so I guess when they were younger, one of them was doing that. But I mean, that was a centerpiece in Arroyo City. And they had a boat ramp. And to say the least, it was colorful. The people that came in and out of there, and it was probably, I believe it was when I first started going there. It was before either one of the county boat ramps. And
oh wow,
yeah, there's a boat ramp upstream of there that's I think Delray it's called now.
Yeah, Delray.
That was the first county boat ramp, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
that's where you would go, and then. Later on, they abandoned that or sold it or whatever and went down to the park. They're on not the reserve, but I guess it is.
Yeah, I mean, it took them a while. It took them a while to sell it, from what I remember. I do remember that, like that ramp, the Delray ramp had to get rebuilt or something. Because I remember when it first reopened, or maybe I'm thinking about COVID, but when it first reopened, I used that ramp almost religiously for a while because I would come in from McAllen. So I would do like an hour and a half
first
drive.
One you get to.
Mm-hmm, right there.
Yeah.
And it's just so easy. It was so much, I just thought it was so much nicer, less potholes and everything else, but I digress. Anyways. Okay. The last 2 questions I like to ask, when I'm closing them, we're going to close them out is, first one being, looking back at everything that you've done, is there anything that you wish you would have done differently?
No, and I can look at all the way back to my upbringing and the town I lived in, grew up in, everything that's come along, everything I've done. I look at it as it was just special to me, and of course, like probably anyone else, I've done things in my past that I, of course, wish I hadn't done, but they're all small things. I mean, they're just. If I would have been, still saying, if I knew now what I knew.
Hindsight 2020.
Yeah,
but it's,
I'd be an awesome person. But no, I've just been blessed with what I've come across and the people I've known and what the sport of fishing has done for me. Mm-hmm. And just very appreciative of it. And I have very few regrets.
It's a good thing to know, a good thing to do, or a good thing to have is no few regrets.
Yeah.
Okay. The last question I ask, and you can answer it as short or as long as you like. As if you're talking to like the next generation, think kids 12, 14, 16, 18, who want to, pursue a profession in the outdoors. What is a piece of advice that you would give them?
Listen to your elders. And that's one of my little pet peeves nowadays is I'm noticing as I get older and I'm coming across more people that
guys
are
like me or something like that,
substantially younger than me, one of the things I notice is they just don't, not everybody, there's some kids that just look up to everything. But I've noticed, and as a general rule, or a lot of people just don't involve older people in what they learn and do. And part of that is, you can blame it on anything you want, but, everybody wants to blame everything on the internet. And it's so easy. It's so accessible to young people And whether it's good information or bad, it's just coming out of this little box, you know. And I would really like to see some way to connect to more kids and get them interested in the outdoors, because, you know, a couple of generations of that will go by and there will not be a substantial enough amount of people that will be there to protect the outdoors.
I agree.
Yeah. And in general, that's my main concern right there. But I get a big kick out of watching people get involved in it and get excited about it. I'll tell you a quick story. There was some people, I always spent probably 3 or 4 years ago at the lodge, and they were young men, you know, probably in their 30s or whatever. And the group leader, always the guy, that's what I call the person who books it and brings the people and everything. And so I'm out there visiting with them out by the breezeway. And we have an outdoor kitchen out there. We're standing there talking. And there was this other young man in this group just standing there intently listening to us. And I just kind of out of the corner of my eye, but he didn't interrupt or say anything. But anyway, long story short, when we're kind of a lull in our first conversation, the young man off to the side comes up and says, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Joe Bob. And I just want you to know that when I was 12 years old, my dad and I were in the store and we bought one fly rod, and you took us out in the backyard and showed us both how to fly cast. And now this would have been 20 something years prior to this conversation. And I mean to tell you that meant more to me than anything you could buy or do, you know, or decide to do. And we did that constantly. And now, so here I am. I'm talking now to a 30-something-year-old young man that fly fishes still. And he remembers it. What he remembers most about it is that little
inception point. Yeah,
that little 30-minute lesson that we gave him. And I will tell you that I never charged anyone for a fly casting lesson.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, that was self-defeating. You know, the whole point is to get them interested. You know, and a selfish point they'll stay interested. Maybe they'll buy something else. you know. But more importantly, you want them to stick with it.
Yeah. No, it's funny, and I'll end it on this story. So, years ago, like 2014, I just started fly fishing, and at the time, the only person who really took me seriously was Larry Haynes. And anyways, for one reason or another, I have one of my childhood friends with me at the house, or we had a condo in Port Isabel at the time, but we're at the condo and just got back from Larry's or something. And my mom or my dad tells me that there's another fly shop on the island called Island Outfitters, ran by Skipper Ray. So I'm all excited. I'm like, oh, I want to go see it. And my mom basically was like, oh, by the way, like I also her or my dad, I don't remember, but she was like, oh, we also got you a fly casting lesson. And at that time, I kind of knew how to cast. You know, I would go to the golf course on Mondays and practice after whatever.
That's exactly how you do it.
Yeah, literally the best way to do it. Anyways, so we get over there and I pay Skipper the $50, and then my friend pays Skipper the $50, and we get on the shallow sport and maybe go 15 feet from the ramp for Jim's Pier over
just to get out on the water,
just to cast. And I throw my first cast, and Skipper looks at me. He goes, "You didn't need to pay me right now. You didn't even need a lesson." I still kept the money though.
At the end of the day, I bet he took it.
No, I was like, he kept the money.
He was bluffing.
But yeah, that's one of the funny stories of that. But anyways, an hour 43. I think we're gonna cut the first 3 minutes out because we were just bullshitting. But wow, Ray, we did it. It's a long one. You happy with everything that?
Yeah, I'm happy with it. And, if something comes up later you want to talk about or whatever, or have a question about, and we kind of went over a few things 2 or 3 times. Yeah. So I mean, you probably could.
Oh, hell no. I ain't cutting anything. This is good conversation. Just trust me.
I'm really bad about.
I'm not even cutting this part out. This part's saying.
Oh man, no! I so easily just wander off. It'll remind me of
it interesting, bro.
Yeah, while I'm talking about it, that reminds me of this and that. So, and I know you had to ask me a few questions 2 or 3 times because I never answered you.
It doesn't matter. Well, with that being said, I mean, all we have left from here to do is just get on out of here, my friend.
Yeah, and maybe you and I can get on a boat sometime.
On mine, bro. You're welcome on it.
Okay.
Cool. All right.